And we're back for another PFL predictions here on the channel. This Friday from Las Vegas, Nevada, we will have the light heavyweights and the lightweights going at it in the PFL season. The main event, Impa Kasanganay taking on Alex Easy Polizzi, and that's in the light heavyweight division. The lightweight headliner is likely Patricky Pitbull versus Clay Collard. Also, the co-main event, Rob Wilkinson taking on Tom Breese. Like we did last week, we will have updates to the standings, and we will make our own standings as we go through today's video. So let's get into it, man. 11 fights on this PFL card, the 2nd of 2024. And folks, if you haven't yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more MMA predictions here on the channel. We do one of these every single week with both the PFL and Bellator and the UFC as well, because yesterday we posted our UFC 300 predictions on the channel. So go make sure you check those out. Link is in the description down below. Let's start things off here with our first fight of the night. Elvin Espinoza taking on Anthony Romero. Might be an underdog pick here, but I'm going to take Anthony Romero to win. Elvin Espinoza hasn't fought anyone all that great yet. Yes, he beat Keone Diggs, he beat him by decision, but other than that, who has Espinoza beat? And you might be thinking, okay, who has Romero beat? That's a fair assessment too, but I just think as a whole, Anthony Romero is the better fighter compared to him and Elvin Espinoza. I mean, again, Espinoza has beat guys in the PFL, but they're all guys that he was supposed to beat. His first fight in the PFL against Hopton Stewart, a guy who was 5-1 at the time, who's now 5-3. Beat a guy named Corey Jackson from ATT, who has not fought since the loss to Espinoza. Beat a guy in the Challenger Series who has not fought since that loss to Espinoza as well. And then Keone Diggs is not a bad win, but Keone Diggs, again, at the end of his career, basically 37 years old. I know he hasn't fought that much, but still seems like Espinoza is kind of on the latter end of his run. So really, Espinoza, I would say, is somewhat unproven, and same with Anthony Romero. That is fair as well, but I think Romero is able to outstrike Espinoza and able to edge out a decision here. I think it's going to be very close, don't get me wrong, but I like what you get out of Romero. I like the different strikes that you do see out of him, right? Look at the big flying knee knockout back in Fury, his last fight before heading on to the PFL, winning a fight on the PFL Challenger Series and losing to OAM in the season last year. I mean, again, it's going to happen to you. Olivier Aubin-Mercier ended up winning back-to-back seasons with the PFL before retiring. So I think Romero is slightly better stand-up-wise, and that's why I'm going to take him to beat Elvin Espinoza. Espinoza does have the grappling advantage. That's, that is apparent, but I do think that ever so slightly Romero can edge out the decision. That's why we're going to go with him to pick up the win by unanimous decision. On to the season, though, and these are the important fights, starting things off here with JJ Wilson and Adam Piccolotti. Going with JJ Wilson to pick up the victory. He is a 10-1 fighter, obviously coming over from Bellator. Both these guys are Bellator names, and I was very impressed with JJ Wilson's win over Mansour Barnoui in his last fight by unanimous decision. Again, JJ Wilson has won every single fight he's had in Bellator except for the loss to Gadzi Rabadanov, who we're going to talk about in a second here, who is also in this season. And for JJ Wilson, again, the weight should no longer be a factor for him, obviously, since he moved up from featherweight up to lightweight. He missed weight a couple times at 145 when he's supposed to fight Adam Borch, when he fought Pedro Carvalho, missed weight in both those fights. Now at lightweight, the weight doesn't really seem to be all that much of an issue, and he strung back-to-back decision wins over Vladimir Tokov and against Mansour Barnoui, and he's going to take on Adam Piccolotti in this fight, who, again, does have a good grappling game, don't get me wrong, but I think JJ Wilson is able to cancel that out, and he's able to go out here and edge out the decision. Piccolotti is coming off a win over Mandel Nallo in his last fight where he subbed him in the 3rd round. Don't forget, though, Piccolotti in a Bellator main event ended up losing to Mansour Barnoui in Italy, right, by submission in the 2nd round. And I get MMA math doesn't work like this, right? Wilson beat Barnoui and Piccolotti lost to Mansour. Like, it doesn't work like that. I get it. Different matchups make different fights. But again, when we look at JJ Wilson, I like what we see as a whole. He was able to fight off the grappling game of Barnoui in their fight last year, I believe. It was in September of last year for Piccolotti. Again, 2-2 in his last 4. 3-3 in his last 6, if you date back to his loss to Benson Henderson back in 2019, and then a win over Jake Smith, a loss to Sidney Outlaw, win over Gorgi Karahanian, loss to Barnoui, win over Mandel Nallo. I'm not all that impressed with Piccolotti. Yeah, he can wrestle. Yeah, he's got a grappling game, but JJ Wilson has seen that before. I think JJ Wilson's able to weather the storm when he's able to go out there and pick up the decision victory. So we look at the table now with that win. JJ Wilson heads into first place. Again, this will probably change, but JJ Wilson with 3 points right now puts him in first place. The right side of the table really does not matter because all these guys, there has to be 5 winners, there has to be 5 losers. The guys on the right side of the bracket are on the table, the standings. it doesn't really matter the order. They're all going to have 0 points, so don't really put too much into that. But again, JJ Wilson in first round now with 3 points, and Adam Piccolotti is on the loser's side of things with 0 and in 10th place. Let's go on to our next fight here. We will have Rabadanov taking on Solomon Renfro, sticking in the lightweight division. For Solomon Renfro, this is a guy who fought on the Contender Series a while ago, was a huge favorite over Johnny Parsons in the welterweight division, ended up losing that fight though by split decision back in 2021. Parsons now a UFC name. Has he seen the most success in the UFC? I mean, he beat Danny Roberts, but like most fighters would beat Danny Roberts. I don't know. He's booked against Michael Gilmore at one point, who might have been the worst UFC fighter ever. But against Solomon Renfro, lost to Johnny Parsons, then went back to LFA, ended up losing a fight in the first round against Adam Fugit, a fight he was a minus 450 favorite in, won 3 fights in a row or 2 fights in a row, then got a shot in the PFL and ended up knocking out Gerard Hussein Al-Sawali in the second round by knockout, ended up getting him a shot in the postseason by winning 1 fight, getting 5 points last year, and he ended up losing a decision to Magomed Karamov. Now, I was surprised he went the full 15 with Magomed Karamov, because Magomed Karamov's pretty solid in his own right? The reigning defending champion for the PFL in the welterweight division. He's not defending his crown here. But again, Renfro wasn't supposed to win that fight. He was a plus 550 dog going into that one. It made sense that Magomed Karamov was able to weather the storm and beat him. How does Solomon Renfro beat Rabadanov? He's going to have to knock him out, I would think so, because Rabadanov all around is so good. This is a guy who is on a huge winning streak. He has won 6 in a row. You look at the back end of that winning streak, a win just a couple, or I guess it's 10 months ago against Peter Bust by unanimous decision, ended up winning on the Bellator versus Rising card against Koji Takeda by decision. Back-to-back wins over JJ Wilson and Bobby King. Again, Rabadanov has been able to string together these victories, and nothing really screams to me that Renfro is going to be the guy that's going to be able to beat him. Rabadanov's ground game is good, and his striking game is solid as well. I think he's able to keep distance from Renfro here, and I don't think this is all that controversial of a pick. I'm taking Rabadanov to win the fight by decision. I think, again, Renfro's best chances with the strikes and with his power, I just don't see it. I'm taking Rabadanov to win, and there you go. He enters the standings with a tie with JJ Wilson for first place. Again, someone has a slot in the 2 spot for now, but there it is, 1 and 2, Wilson and Rabadanov. And then on the right side, of course, Solomon Renfro and Adam Piccolotti. Let's now move on to our next fight here. Sticking in the lightweight division once more, we have got Bruno Miranda taking on Brent Primus. Believe it or not, I'm going with Brent Primus to pick up the victory, and I think he actually gets it done by submission. Now, when Brent Primus is on, that's what he excels in. It's with this ground game, right? Picked up a big upset victory, beating Mansour Barnawi. I know Barnawi, we've talked about him losing quite a couple times now, but still, Barnawi's Bellator run went win over Adam Piccolotti, lost to Brent Primus, lost to JJ Wilson. Now he's been booked again in the next card I believe they're doing in France, right? Yeah, the next Bellator card in France. Barnawi is going to be back on it, taking on a guy he should probably beat with a 26-13 record. But anyways, for Barnawi, right, loses to Brent Primus, and Brent Primus is again able to out-grapple him and just able to overall win the fight by decision. But when Primus is on, and when he's at his best, he's getting fights down and he's submitting them. Again, in this PFL, in this PFL scoring system, obviously, you get rewarded for getting finishes. And now, you know, the last Bellator fighter to say, oh, I'm going to really prioritize getting finishes. I'm not saying Primus has said this yet, but I'm just saying this just in my own right. The last Bellator fighter to say, all right, I'm coming into the season, I'm going to prioritize getting finished, was Liz Carmouche. And then she ended up not getting a finish. Anyways, for Primus, right, back-to-back submission wins. I know it was in 2019 and 2020, but back-to-back first-round submission victories for him. I think he's able to submit a guy like Bruno Miranda, who is a primary striker, who is a Tiger Muay Thai guy. He's got phenomenal striking, right? But his ground game does leave a little bit to be desired. And again, you get a guy like Primus who he's fighting, who can effectively get fights down, who can effectively wrestle, and can use his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu as a whole. I think it's going to be a tough fight overall for Bruno Miranda in this one. Miranda 1-3 in the season last year, beat Ahmed Amir in his first fight, but that wasn't a season fight. I don't believe it was. Wait, was it a season fight? Ahmed Amir, was it? Oh, it was a season fight. Yeah, it was. Excuse me. Won back-to-back season fights. He had 6 points because he beats Amir and he beats Alex Martinez after that, and then lost a fight to Oliver Aben Mercier, obviously, in the postseason. I think Brent Primus is able to really showcase the wrestling in this one. I think he's going to find his way probably like an arm triangle or something once he does get the fight on the ground. I do like the overall strength and power out of Primus to get this fight and to drag it on the ground if he can avoid the striking game of Tiger Muay Thai's Bruno Miranda, obviously over in Thailand. I think Primus is able to weather the storm and win. I'm going to take Primus to get the first finish in the lightweight division. I'm taking him here by second round sub, as you can see right there. And of course, going back to the table, Brent Primus enters first place in the PFL lightweight division with 5 points. Miranda on the loser's side of things with 0 points. I get Primus. Didn't beat Nurmagomedov, obviously. Lost to Shabli, got knocked out. Lost to Islam Mamedov. I understand it, but matchup-wise, I like him against Miranda here. If he can really work his wrestling, I think he's able to win. Give me Brent Primus to have 5 points and to put himself in first place of the PFL's lightweight division. We now move on to the light heavyweight division. Our first fight, Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Simon Biyong. I like Shoeface to pick up the win in Antonio Carlos Jr. This is a guy who has not lost yet in the PFL. He is 5-0. You date back to 2021 where he picks up his first win over Tom Lawler, then beats Emiliano Sordi, and then beats Martin Hamlet in the championship fight by Rene Kachok in the first round. He looks to defend his championship in 2022. He beats Delan Monte, he beats Bruce Soto, and then he's booked against Omar Akhmedov, and Shoeface has to withdraw. Now, he did not fight in 2023 due to some different circumstances, but now he's back in 2024, and everything points to him going out there and getting a quick finish over the former Bellator name in Simon Biyong. This is a guy who's only 2-2 in Bellator. And really, it feels like this spot should probably go to Jose Augusto. But I guess Augusto's off of his Bellator contract, I think, because he fought his last fight in LFA. So I don't think Augusto really fights in Bellator anymore. Before Biyong, right, he's come off a loss to Jose Augusto, who I just mentioned, who, is now no longer fighting under the Bellator banner. Biyong's only 2-2 in Bellator, right? A loss to Christian Edwards, a win over Luke Traynor, a win over Dragos Zubko by second round TKO, and then a win over a loss against Jose Augusto. That fight was about a year ago now. It's going to be exactly 11 months to the day when he fights Antonio Carlos Jr., and I just think it's a very tough fight for Simon Biyong. It's going to be tough for him to deal with this grappling game of Antonio Carlos Jr. Biyong's only time he's been finished back in 2018 was by rear naked choke. Again, it's been a while, but still, Shoeface's grappling is very good. He's got 11 wins by submission in his career. That's what he does. He's the former PFL champion for a reason. You've got two former PFL light heavyweight champions in here with both Antonio Carlos Jr. and with Impa Kasanganay. Again, three. I forgot Rob Wilkinson's in the season too. So, again, light heavyweight is absolutely stacked this year. You got Kasanganay, Wilkinson, and Antonio Carlos Jr., and you've got the former 170-pound champion inside of Usyk as well. Light heavyweight is the most difficult division, I think, to get out of this year just because of the amount of names that are in this. But I think Antonio Carlos Jr. does what he needs to do. I think this goes without saying. He is probably one of the bigger favorites on this card. It just makes sense. Again, grappling-wise, he should have an advantage all day against Biyong. I'm taking him to pick up the win by first round submission, and there you go. Antonio Carlos Jr. reestablishes himself as the number one name for now in the light heavyweight division in the PFL. He gets himself 6 points. Simon Biyong, of course, enters the loser side of things with 0 points. Shoeface, though, in first with 6. Let's move on to our next one here. Stick in the light heavyweight division. You have another former champion. I know not a PFL, season champion, well, kinda. The PFL Europe light heavyweight champion, Jakub Nedoh, taking on Duvozan Yagshimuradov here, the former ACB champion a while ago, who moved over to Bellator to fight in their Grand Prix, where he lost to Corey Anderson by TKO in the third round, then lost to Carl Albertson, and then won 3 straight fights after that, beating Rafael Carvalho, beating Julius Iglesias, and beating Rozansky in his last fight. So Yagshimuradov has bounced back since his first 2 hiccups in the Bellator cage, and now here you go, he gets Jakub Nedoh in this one, who ran through the PFL Europe light heavyweight division. Watch his run. 3 fights, 3 knockouts, 2 of them in the first round, 1 of them in the second round. I did not know if he was going to beat Simeon Powell. Simeon Powell was the guy they kind of built PFL Europe around. It was him and Dakota Dachiva. And Dakota Dachiva now is obviously in the flyweight division. She's one of their top fighters, right? In the state side. Of the PFL, right? You're probably going to see Dakota Dachiva in the playoffs. She won by first round knockout against Lisa Malton like she was supposed to do. Anyways, I remember when they started PFL Europe, the two names they promoted the most were Dakota Dachiva and Simeon Powell, the two fighters from the UK. And Simeon Powell, don't get me wrong, still has a bright future. He's 25 years old. He's 6'5", has an 85-inch reach, fighting in the light heavyweight division. His future likely holds, though, at heavyweight, I would think. But Simeon Powell, again, lost in the finals 2-1 Jakob Nedoh. Nedoh ended up knocking him out in the second round. And now here he is, after 3 knockout victories in one season. He puts himself in this PFL season, taking on Yagshimuradov. I think this is an excellent fight. I do worry a little bit for Yagshimuradov here because Nedoh hits hard. He's able to knock guys out with his jab. Like, he's a very powerful guy. And I think he's just much quicker than Duojan. I think he is. I think he's quicker. I think he's got more skills in the feet. I think this is going to be a striking fight. And I think Jakob Nedoh, in his first fight over in the American PFL season, wins by first round knockout. And there you go. I think he does get it in a... I think Antonio Carlos Jr.'s finish will be faster than Nedoh's. So that's why I do have Antonio Carlos Jr. in first place with 6 points. But I think Nedoh gets 6 as well. I think this is going to be a big finish for him. And this is what I'm talking about. You have 5 champions in this PFL season from the PFL. Antonio Carlos Jr., Impa Kasanganay, Rob Wilkinson, Jakob Nedoh, and Sadabusi. 4 of the 5 of those fighters have technically this, they can claim to be the current champion. Nedoh hasn't lost. Shoeface hasn't lost. Wilkinson hasn't lost. And obviously Kasanganay is the reigning champion. And for Sadabusi, he's coming up a weight. This is how stacked the PFL light heavyweight division is this year. It's going to be a tough one to get out of. But right now we've got Shoeface in first with 6 and Nedoh in second with 6 as well. Let's move on to our next fight here. Sticking in the light heavyweight division, this is what I'm talking about. Sadabusi taking on last year's runner-up in Josh Silveira. You know Silveira from, of course, his father, Conan Silveira, coach at ATT. Sadabusi, of course, has been the long-running PFL fighter. He's fought in every single PFL season dating back to 2018. He's fought at 85, 70, and now we get a light heavyweight version of Sadabusi. And what is that going to bring? Is that going to bring more power out of Sadabu? I don't know. Because last year, right, Sadabu's regular season was really good. Back-to-back knockout finishes, then getting to the playoffs, beating Carlos Ayala by split decision, and then losing to Magomed Karamov in the championship fight. But it feels like Sadabusi is one of these guys that is just always going to be around the PFL, right? He's almost always in the playoffs every single season. You look at what he did in 2022 to win the world championship. Given he didn't get a finish the entire time, but then in 2023, back-to-back finish victories on his way to the playoffs. Sadabusi's a good striker, obviously. Swedish Denzel Washington. He's still going to look big for this weight class. Don't get me wrong. He was 6'3" at welterweight. He's 6'3" at light heavyweight. He's still going to be bigger than some of these guys in the 205-pound division for the PFL. That's how big Sadabusi is. He's an extreme couture guy. And again, he's a really good kickboxer. He keeps range very well. My question is, though, can Josh Silveira take him down? There's a chance he will be able to. If Silveira can take him down and hold him down, it's going to be a long night in the office for Sadabusi. I would like to think Sadabusi is going to kind of implement the same game plan that Impa Kasanganay had against Silveira. Keep distance, use your all-around kickboxing to keep Silveira at length and just, outstrike him. But Silveira is a guy that I don't think C can finish. You saw what he endured in the Kasanganay fight. Yeah, Impa probably won every single round, but Silveira refused to go away, and I just think it's going to be tough for C to get a finish against Josh Silveira just because that guy is, I don't know what he's made out of, but again, the guy is really tough. So I think C just kicks his way to victory here. I think the leg kick's going to be huge in this fight. I think the body work is going to be huge as well. I know Sadabusi is getting up there in age at 37, but him moving up to 205 isn't going to require him to cut the weight that he used to at one point. So I think Sadabusi does win. I like him to out-kickbox his way to victory here and beat Josh Silveira by unanimous decision. And with that, Sadabusi enters the standings here with 3 points in third place. That's an interesting picture. He looks like he's like the Undertaker in that third picture. I don't know. But yeah, Sadabusi enters third place with 3 points. Josh Silveira, of course, joins Yagshimuradov and Simon Biyong in the loser's circle. And of course, C behind Nedoh and Carlos Jr. I just don't think C is able to get this finish against Silveira. Again, if Kasanganay couldn't do it in 5 rounds, I don't think C is going to be able to do that. Again, though, I've not seen Sadabusi's power at 205 pounds. Nobody has. So it will be interesting, but I'm going to go with Sadabusi to win the fight by unanimous decision. To our next one, we go back to the lightweight division here. Mads Burnell makes his PFL debut, taking on Michael Dufort in this one. For the Canadian in Dufort, 12-4 professionally. This is a guy who did win in the PFL in 2022 on the Challenger Series, won 3 fights outside the PFL since then, winning once in UAE Warriors, beating Violent Bob Ross, Luis Pena over an Aries fight series, over in, not the Aries fight series though, a different Aries fighting league over in Tennessee. That card was in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where Torres Finney, former Dana White's Contender Series fighter, did win in the main event. And then a win for Michael Dufort over Joe Giannetti over in Cage Titans, obviously over there in the Northeast, ran by one Calvin Cater and the guys over there, right? So Dufort has beat good names outside of the PFL. He's beaten, back-to-back former UFC fighters, but he gets Mads Burnell, who's really tough. I know Mads Burnell won that back-to-back losing streak, losing to Adam Borch and Pedro Carvalho, and I was really down on him. I'm not going to lie. I was really down on Mads Burnell because, personally, I don't think any really good fighter should be losing to Pedro Carvalho. I don't think Carvalho is very good. We are going to see him in the PFL season, and he is the guy who is the stepping stone, or not really the stepping stone, but he's the guy that Brendan Loughnane is going to get 6 points over, right? Like, that's what Carvalho is being used for next week in the PFL season when he loses to Loughnane, right? They want to get Loughnane back on the winning ways, and he's probably going to knock out Carvalho in the first round. So that's what I don't like about Burnell. He lost to Carvalho, but then he came back and he beat Justin Gonzalez in a close, on paper, a close fight, but he went out there and beat him by decision and beat Daniel Weichel like he's supposed to do. I don't really understand the matchmaking in that one. But this fight's going to be won and lost on the ground. Whoever has better grappling game is going to win this fight because both these guys are known for getting the fights down to the mat. I think Burnell is better. I think Burnell is a better grappler than Michael Dufort. Again, even though Dufort has beat former UFC guys like Luis Pena, like Joe Giannetti outside of the PFL, Mads Burnell has fought the better strength of schedule with guys like, again, Carvalho, but still, like Adam Borch in the main event, Emmanuel Sanchez, Daniel Weichel. I pick Mads Burnell in pretty much every single fight that he's in. Not because I think the highest of this guy, it's just because it's hard to pick against Burnell because when you look at it on paper, he should beat a lot of these guys. And I think he's going to do the same exact thing to Michael Dufort. I think he grounds him, and I think he sees a lot of success down there. Mads Burnell's the all-around better ground fighter, and I think he does go out here and pick up the win by unanimous decision. And as we look back to the standings, there you have it. Mads Burnell, again, enters that tie for second place with 3 points. Dufort enters the losers column, and of course, Brent Primus stays in first place with 5 points with this PFL lightweight division. To our next one, sticking in the lightweight division, our final fight here, 155 pounds tonight, it will be Clay Collard taking on Patricky Pitbull. Should be a good fight, and the PFL advertises Clay Collard as the most entertaining lightweight on the face of the earth. Is he truly that? I guess, I don't know. Collard is entertaining, don't get me wrong, and they want him to beat the brakes off of Patricky Pitbull. They do, right? Former pro boxer Clay Collard really made his name, I'll say, after beating Anthony Pettis, right? They put him in a main event spot, the first PFL card of 2021. Anthony Pettis is in the main event, and Pettis loses. He's their big free agency signing, and Clay Collard boxes the brakes off him. Beats him by decision, pretty much wins every single round of that one. Maybe you could give the last round to Anthony Pettis, but probably you go 30-27 for Clay Collard. He ends up losing in the playoffs to Hoosh Manfio in a fight that he arguably should have won, but it's fine. Manfio won. Collard comes back, has a fight of the night performance, and maybe one of the best fights of 2022 against Jeremy Stephens, but then drops a fight to Alex Martinez and gets eliminated from the playoffs. Comes back in 2023, beats Yamamoto Nishikawa by unanimous decision, TKO Stevie Ray, gets Shane Burgos in a barn burner of a fight in the playoffs, but then loses to Oliver Aben-Mercier like expected. Now, he got to fight in the PFL versus Bellator card, and he got subbed by AJ McKee. It's going to happen to you. Do I think Patricky Pitbull can do the same thing and get Collard to the ground? Or not get him to the ground. Do I think he can just run right through Collard and knock him out? I don't think so, right? Patricky, unlike his brother, is more of a striker. I know Patricio does both, don't get me wrong. But like Patricky, you won't see Patricky on the ground that much. You'll see more Patricky striking with you. I've never thought Patricky Pitbull's the best. Yeah, he's the former champion, but they literally booked the guy against Peter Queally for the belt after Patricio vacated it, and just because Patricky lost the fight to Queally, they rebooked the fight in a rematch for the World Championship over in Ireland. Yeah, Patricky won by second round knockout, and if you get a guy like Peter Queally against Patricky, yeah, he's going to beat him. But Clay Collard's a really good boxer, and I don't see Patricky Pitbull getting a finish in this fight, nor do I see him getting the better of Collard on the feet. Like, we've seen Patricky Pitbull lose these fights. We saw him lose to Usman Nurmagomedov. I get it's a different style of fight. And Chablis, I get it's kind of a different style of fight as well, because the grappling game is always there with Chablis as well. But still, like, Patricky lost to Tafik Musayev in a straight-up striking fight. Like, these better strikers are going to get the better of Patricky Pitbull in these type of fights. And I feel like Clay Collard is going to push a pace on Patricky Pitbull that Pitbull does not want anything to do with. I think Collard really brings it to him, and Collard gives him hell on the feet. That's what I think happens in this one. I'm going Clay Collard to win the fight. I think he gets it done by decision. I think he does, end this little 2-fight losing skid. I think he beats Patricky Pitbull. I've never been the most impressed with Pitbull. I really haven't, especially as of late, right? After he lost to Musayev, right? I mean, this guy's, lost 4 out of 6, right? And in that little run, yeah, he did become the champion just because he lost a fight. He got a championship fight, after losing back-to-back fights. Like, I've never thought the highest of Patricky. I think Collard does blitz him really well. I think Collard uses his all-around boxing. And again, if Clay Collard's able to outbox Shane Burgos, he should be able to outbox Patricky Pitbull. If he's able to outbox Jeremy Stephens, I know Stephens was at the end of his run when he came into the PFL, but still, if he's able to do that against a guy like Jeremy Stephens and a guy like Shane Burgos, I like Collard to go out here and beat Patricky Pitbull. I don't think he's going to get a finish, but I think Clay Collard does win. And then you have this big, tie with all these guys with 3 points, basically leaving the lightweights completely wide open, because anyone who lost and who's on the right side of this table can definitely still get into the playoffs and potentially could even be the first seed, because the PFL does things like this. If you get a first round finish in one fight and go 1-1 overall, that means more than 2 decision victories and the guy going 2-0. So say, just for example, Solomon Renfro his next fight. I'm not saying this is going to happen by any stretch of the imagination. Just take this as a complete, grain of salt. Solomon Renfro gets Michael Dufort in his next win and knocks him out in the first round. Renfro would get 6 points, and that would have more weight than, say, Collard beats Miranda by unanimous decision. Renfro would be higher in the standings with 6 points and 1 knockout than Collard would be with 2 decision victories. That's how much the PFL tries to emphasize getting finishes. So that's what I'm saying. Anyone's still alive in this version of things, unlike kind of how it is at heavyweight with the PFL right now. And even as we're looking at it kind of in the light heavyweight division, yeah, these guys can still get in the playoffs, but the way the lightweight division is, anyone can be the first seed, which is kind of nuts. So again, we'll see how this goes, but for now, this is how I have the PFL's lightweight division looking. Let's move on to our next one here. Going back to the light heavyweight division in the co-main event, Rob Wilkinson, the former champion, takes on Tom Breese. Now, Wilkinson got suspended, basically. He was in the season last year. He tested positive for elevated testosterone to testosterone. I don't know what that means, I'll be honest. I watched Breaking Bad, but I don't, completely know what all this stuff means. I hate science with a passion. Anyways, I hated chemistry, I hated any science. But anyways, like, I take psychology right now, and I don't even go to class. But it's like a class where you don't have to go. Anyways, that's besides the point. Enough about that. Rob Wilkinson beat Thiago Santos, but then getting popped for steroids. Was first booked against Will Fleury. Again, Fleury dropped out because of a failed drug test, and then booked against Ty Flores, but then again, Wilkinson failed the drug test, so now here he is against Tom Breese. Originally, this was supposed to be Phil Davis. This is Phil Davis, whole different type of fight. I think Phil Davis wins. I think Phil Davis beats Rob Wilkinson. I think Phil Davis is the favorite to win this season. Because, again, Phil Davis makes the season so much more interesting, too, because you get a real dominant wrestler in this entire thing, in this entire equation. And him and Antonio Carlos Jr. in the playoffs would be very interesting. But again, Davis is out. I think Phil Davis likely goes back to Bellator and maybe fights for the championship against Corey Anderson. Maybe they do it again. Anyways, Wilkinson gets Tom Breese here. Wilkinson should win the fight pretty easily, right? When you look back at his 2022 run, 4 straight wins. It's a knockout finish over Bruce Soto in the second round on the undercard, then beating Victor Pesta by knockout in the first round on the undercard, then coming back beating Delon Monte by first round knockout, then beating Omari Akhmedov by second round TKO. Monte, that was the fight Monte got injured. Yeah, it was the fight No. Monte got injured in the Josh Silveira fight. It was not in the Wilkinson fight. Anyways, Wilkinson again ran right through the competition. He gets Tom Breese, who again is a former UFC fighter, ended up going 5-3 in the UFC. Got cut from the promotion though after he was supposed to fight Antonio Arroyo. He dropped out the last second. They ended up cutting him. But since leaving the UFC, the guy's done pretty well. He's actually 6-1. One loss in KSW back in 2022 by first round knockout. But other than that, Tom Breese has been pretty good. He won the PFL on a PFL Europe card last year by first round submission. And that's what he has to do to beat Rob Wilkinson, obviously, right? That's where I think it takes a little bit of time for Wilkinson to get the finish. We're going second round TKO here for Wilkinson. Because I do think Tom Breese will threaten a little bit with the grappling game. I think that's where Wilkinson will struggle a little bit, but I do still think he will get the better of Breese as we get a little bit later into this fight, and I think that's where he does get it in the second round. Again, I think Breese offers up a different stylistic matchup than Phil Davis, but it's still kind of the same in the same respect, but it's just that Breese's grappling will be more effective, but obviously does not have the wrestling approach and the wrestling game that Phil Mr. Wonderful Davis has. So again, I think Wilkinson goes through him. He beats him in the second round. I think Breese has a chance on the ground if he can catch him, if he can get Wilkinson down. I just don't know how effective that is truly going to be. I like Rob Wilkinson to go out here and just kind of dominate on the feet. I think Breese will have some of his moments on the ground, but I'm taking Rob Wilkinson to win the fight by second round TKO. And as we look at the standings here, Antonio Carlos Jr., of course, still in first place. Jacob Nedoh in second with 6. Rob Wilkinson inserts himself from the standings with 5 points in third place. Sadabusi obviously still in fourth, and you got everyone else on the right side of the table. Let's go on to the main event. Again, in the light heavyweight division, it is the champion, Impa Kasanganay, versus Alex Easy Polizzi. I am going with Impa to win the fight by first round knockout. I'm going to say very late first round finish for Impa. However, I think this is going to be a tough fight for Kasanganay. Polizzi is a true light heavyweight, which I understand Kasanganay has dealt with before, but I'll make a comparison to this fight in a second. Polizzi has not won since 2022. That is something to keep it account for. He has not won in 2 years. Back-to-back losses to Yoel Romero and Carl Moore. But Alex Polizzi is a true wrestler, and I've always feared that some of these wrestlers are going to give Impa Kasanganay some trouble because, again, Kasanganay really should be fighting at 185 pounds. The PFL does not have a 185-pound division. I think Kasanganay would be better suited in a 185-pound environment. 170, where he used to fight before in the UFC, would not make sense, I think, because you'd be have to cut so much weight to keep getting down to 170. So that's why 205 feels like a better weight class for Kasanganay than 170. But 185, as you saw in his Johnny Eblen fight, is by far the better weight class for Impa Kasanganay. Now, that fight against Johnny Eblen, again, is at 185 pounds. Eblen is a middleweight who can wrestle. And I thought personally Kasanganay beat Eblen. I thought he did. I thought Kasanganay did enough damage in the feet to beat Eblen in that fight. Now, I've always worried for Kasanganay dealing with guys such as Alex Polizzi who can wrestle and who are bigger than him. Because Kasanganay really does not have to cut to get to the 205-pound weight class. Alex Polizzi definitely does. Right? That's where I've always worried some about Kasanganay. Don't get me wrong, I still think he beats Polizzi. And I'll make the case this fight's going to look a lot like the Martin Hamlet fight, just that it's going to take a little bit longer. Right? Hamlet tried to wrestle some with Kasanganay. Kasanganay fought it off pretty well, landed a 1-2 and put Martin Hamlet out. It kind of looked somewhat like the Justin Gaethje James Vick knockout to a certain degree, honestly, just kind of how Martin Hamlet fell back like James Vick fell. But still, I think Kasanganay does enough damage to beat Polizzi. And again, with the PFL scoring system, Kasanganay is going to be looking for a finish, and he's going to be looking for a finish early. I think Kasanganay gets it at the end of the first round, which, as we look at the standings real quick, I think it does put him behind both Nedoh and Carlos Jr. I think he gets it later than Jacob Nedoh gets it, and I think he gets it later than what Antonio Carlos Jr. does. But still, Kasanganay is in a very good spot for this season. Because again, I think the PFL, they see that he fought Eblen pretty tough. I always thought they were going to give him kind of a good matchup because he fought Eblen so tough in Saudi Arabia. So I would expect them to give Kasanganay Simon Biyong next, I'll be honest. They'll probably give him next. Biyong next, or give him Tom Breese. I think those are, or maybe Yagshimuradov, right? They want to get Kasanganay back in the playoffs, which I'm cool with. I've always been a big Impa Kasanganay fan. You can go back and watch. I have UFC prediction videos on my channel dating all the way back to UFC 249, right? You can go back and watch when Kasanganay fought Sasha Planatlikov, when he fought Maki. You can go back to when he fought Maki Pitolo. Maki Pitolo. I think the fight that I really stated I'm a big Impa Kasanganay fan was the fight that he lost to Joaquin Buckley, because I went out and said he was going to dominate Buckley. He didn't. But I would still say that, again, Impa, I think, is going to have a better all-around career than Buckley, obviously, right? I mean, I know Buckley's in the top 15 now, but Kasanganay is a world champion in another promotion. I've always been high on Kasanganay. I've always thought that this guy, he got into the sport at such a late age. He started fighting in 2018, which has only been 6 years now, where Kasanganay's been a full-time fighter. The guy's only 30, and he's still getting better. I think Kasanganay's wrestling is going to keep improving. Again, I thought he should have beat Elvin. I think Kasanganay is truly the favorite right now in the light heavyweight division. I know he's a little bit undersized, but Kasanganay's got so many skills. He hits like a truck, and his defensive wrestling keeps on getting better as well. And again, the Elvin fight keeps on showing me that, again, I think Kasanganay is that guy here. I think Impa does win. Now, I think Kasanganay's future is definitely at 185 pounds. I hope the PFL makes a 185-pound division next year, because that's where Kasanganay should reside. But for now, I like Impa to be in third place with 6 points. I think he weathers the storm of the Alex Polizzi grappling game. I know Polizzi's got a good chin. It took Yoel Romero 14 minutes and 59 seconds to knock out Polizzi in their fight, but still, Kasanganay hits very hard, and Impa's willing to go after it. I don't think he took too much damage in the Elvin fight to the point where his chin's messed up, because that's kind of where he got, where Kasanganay's lost before when he fought Joaquin Buckley. So many people forget he fought Maki Pitolo in a 15-minute banger like a month before he lost to Buckley when he got spinning back kicked. And that's what's kind of always hurt Kasanganay with his chin. It's because of the activity that he has had. I would be a little bit concerned with this one, but still, he didn't eat that much damage in the Elvin fight. Elvin did more of his work on the ground, and I don't think it's too many damaging blows to the head of Impa Kasanganay. So then Kasanganay gets the first round knockout, putting him in third place here in the light heavyweight division. And folks, thank you for watching our PFL predictions here on the channel, with the main event being Impa Kasanganay and Alex Easy Polizzi. Make sure to come back next week for our next PFL video with the welterweights and with the featherweights. I believe it's the welterweights. I know the featherweights are up next week. I believe it's the welterweights too, right? Yeah, it's gotta be the welterweights. So you got guys like Logan Storley, Gochi Yamuchi, Neiman Gracie, Andrei Koreshkov. You got Magomed Umlatov in the welterweight division. In the featherweight division, Brendan Loughnan's back. Bubba Jenkins is back. Kai Kamaka makes his PFL debut. Gabriel Braga is back. Justin Gonzalez enters the fray. Adam Borch is here as well. Maybe the favorite, Timur Kizraev, is in this season as well. Brett Johns is his opponent in the first round. So no Jesus Pinedo in the featherweight division this season, but it should be exciting. We'll have that one come at you next week as well. So folks, thank you all for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoy the video. Make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. Folks, thank you all for watching, and Mamba forever.